I really recommend that you try using this to just keep your file, just keep it organized. And again, this could be where, like in this case, the 3 final ones get put on their own layer, and then everything else, the other layers can just be hidden. And that will allow you to have a little bit more mental and sort of virtual space to work on those. But you don't get lost into your other stuff, you just want to not have to see it all the time. Yeah, I wish I had that option in my studio.
Yeah, you would if you worked digitally all the time. You just gotta move all your tools onto the computer. Yeah, and then slide it into the trash bin whenever I'm done. Yeah, so I guess just for purposes of the video, so what I've done for Emily's project here is I've changed these. I'm guessing you're using Flow to do these. Yeah, they look great. So we've taken all of Emily's like sketches here, or her like straight layouts, and I've moved them onto this layer, so I can turn that off. And then we moved everything that we want to look at onto the blue layer, so I can make that my main layer. So if I double click here, I guess, and then I can turn the default layer off. As far as moving stuff to a layer, I select it, so we're left clicking it, and then I am selecting the layer I want to move it to, and I'm right clicking on that, and then I just go down to change object layer, and that should display the color of the layer that you're currently changing it to. You have lots of options. You can always change that layer's color. You can make all of your layers have the same color if you really want. Like if you're like, wow, I really can't see this blue, I'm going to change it to black. But you're still able to hide everything. So these look cool. So these are your bangles, yeah?
Yeah, they're like for the upper arm.
Okay. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about your process a little bit? Kind of how you approach this?
Yeah, so this is my second time doing Rhino. I did it last semester. So I wanted to try and do like ring form, like I wanted to try and do bracelets instead of rings. And so the way I thought about doing it, and I don't know if you showed this before, but I know about the flow tool.
Yeah.
So I like made them straight, like how you normally like make a bangle out of sheet metal, and then you like curve it, and then I made a circle that was the diameter of my, like what I measured my arm to be.
Nice.
And then I cut that circle, and I just would flow them alongside. But definitely the biggest issue I faced was it would go inside instead of outside. But
Yep.
I didn't know how to put that question into the internet.
Oh.
So I kept trying to fix it. But then eventually I got a video that was literally like, click the other side of the line. I was
Yep.
like, it's that simple, but yeah. But yeah, it was pretty easy. I mean, it was like really, I just thought it was really cool that it could like, you could pick that size, like it like just would wrap around. Because these are smaller than the actual size that I needed it to be because I wanted them to be adjustable.
Oh.
So that was cool how all that figured out. Yeah.
So you'll be able to like bend them a little bit
Yeah, so
as they.
exactly. So they can,
Okay.
you can squeeze them to like fit better.
Oh, that's cool.
So Emily, have you scaled these? Because this is one thing that I want to talk about today. A lot of you last week had questions of like, how do I know what size this is? You know, how do I scale it to actually fit my body or whatever? Are these already scaled?
They should be. So I had Alec help me take the measurement of my arm, which was I think 24, so 240 millimeters.
Yes.
So yeah, that's somewhere around there. I don't know. I didn't do it, but I don't know if it's necessarily correct, 100% correct. If that makes sense.
Yeah, and so I'm just kind of looking at this at your approximation digitally of like the width of the sheet or the thickness of the sheet metal.
I did like 2 to 3 millimeters.
Okay, 3 millimeters is pretty stinking thick.
That's what I thought it was.
If you're wanting to
Yeah.
That might be too thick.
I use that thicker one for like the thicker designs, not the other two designs, like those ones are thinner, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
But yeah, that's why I kept the other ones to make it thinner, but yeah,
And I think it's a difference between if you wanna shape it once, you know what I mean?
yeah,
Versus, is it something that you actually wanna be able to like, change its shape and keep bending it, you know, it's just a, I use it for metal anyway, it'll work hard and crack after a while, but, yeah.
that's cool.
Yeah, so those two are 3 and this one's 2.
Okay.
So yeah, what's,
Yes, that's a good.
what?
How are you measuring it?
How?
Really good question.
Yeah.
Hey, everybody.
So
Yeah.
I'm using the dimension menu right here. So up across the top here, you have all those menus. So dimension gives you linear, aligned, basically all these kind of like tools that you can use based on your geometry to measure it. So I'm using align dimension. If I just used linear and I measure this, you can see it can only go like in the cardinal directions, like north, south, east, west. And it's giving you, it's mismeasuring it, right? This is not correct. So by using align, I can measure between those 2 points and get the correct dimension. So another critical point as far as dimensioning goes is you need to be aware of how your object snaps work. So I don't know how much we talked about this last time, probably not a whole lot, but your O snaps are turned on along the bottom here. So you can turn them on and off there. You can also disable them with this checkbox. But they're just all geometric points on your model. So you can turn them on and off, just have ones you need. And that helps you place things, it helps you move things accurately, and they're critical for dimensioning. So, like, what I did over here when Emily was kind of talking about her, how she was getting this set up, I took the diameter of this thing just to get an idea of where she was at as far as length and everything. But there's actually a command called length where you can click on any curve, like if we wanted to just double check her circumference here. And if we just click on that and hit enter, it'll give us the length up here in the command line of 240 millimeters. So there's also ways to measure things like that.
Okay, thank you.
You did. You're exactly right.
Spot on.
And then the thickness, I just made a guess. I was like, I think metal sheets are this thick. Definitely went too thick, but I was like, I'd rather go too thick and then go back and just like pull them thinner. Yeah.
Is there an easy way to convert gauges to millimeters? No. Okay.
The one way, and I'll say this to everybody, if you have, most people in here, y'all are used to working, you know what 18 gauge metal looks like and feels like. 18 gauge metal is 1 millimeter. So that is a good, that's a good tangible baseline. If you're just if you're looking and you're thinking like, okay, well, what's this really look and feel like? Just remember that 18 gauge is 1 millimeter. So if you imagine 2 stacks or then 3 sheets of 18 gauge stacked, that's your 3 millimeter thickness, and that's going to be pretty beefy. So that's probably the most, in terms of what this class already, in terms of materials.
Yeah.
That's the most one-to-one target, that I like to kind of remember. It's like, oh, okay, 18 gauge is 1 millimeter. That kind of helps me then, mentally feel. I think that's kind of what these things might have been.
So I'm curious then, so is 9 gauge then 2 millimeters? Or does it not work like that?
It doesn't work like that.
Oh, that's a bummer.
Yeah, I mean, look at a gauge plate, like I said, the ones that here in the US at least, like the backside of the gauge plate is all thousandths of an inch.
Okay.
So you've got thousandth of an inch scale, and then you have the standard round chart gauge scale.
Okay.
There are charts, I mean, it's easy to convert those into millimeters. And in Europe, they'll use that, it's a lot more straightforward, but,
So, Emily, so you're going to hand make these, is that correct? Or are you casting these?
I was gonna cast them.
You're casting them. Okay.
Well,
may not.
Yeah.
I don't know if you are.
That's what I'm saying, I don't know, they're big, that's
They're too
why,
big.
yeah, exactly.
Too
So
big.
that's why I kind of just made them as like if I were to make these type of things,
Oh, sure.
yeah.
I'm curious though, could you like cast components of them?
Yeah.
Like if you wanted to like cast all of these nubs or like cast like,
Yeah, and this is a great example to everybody of like, it's one thing to be able to design something and to design it really well and really successfully, right?
yeah.
But
Nice
if
to see that.
if the dimensions of the object exceed what we can actually physically test, it's gonna be tricky. So we would have to go in and measure our flaps and really start to see like, okay, how, will this even fit in a flask that we have? Can we screw it at an angle that will also facilitate, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, totally.
So some of it just comes down to,
I knew that they'd probably be too big, but I wanted to do something other than a ring.
Yeah.
And that's why I just kind of made it as like try to make it possible to cast, but not necessarily in our facility. You can also shrink these and make them little clip-on earrings.
I don't know if you'll remember this very well or not, but I think earlier this semester I did some slides, and one of them was this, it was actually a handle on a teapot that an artist named Tom Muir designed. And he could design it really easily in Rhino and print it. But again, he printed the whole thing. There's no way to actually cast it. So he broke it down into, I think, 2.5-inch sections. And the way that in Rhino, he actually designed like an interlocking channel, right? So that when they printed, each piece actually just sort of clipped in with the one next to it. And then he screwed them and cast them, and then that's how they were in metal. So they interlocked in metal, and then he could just solder them. But they like almost like snapped into place. So he actually ended up casting these like big Lego teapot pieces. But in Rhino, he just designed kind of a slot and tab system. So that's a really successful way of dealing with like breaking one object into components that are castable,
Yeah.
and then setting them up and then just soldering them. Yeah.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
That is, I would love to see that. That's amazing. I often wondered how you would, I mean, I guess, yeah, that makes sense, components, but to make a joint and cast it and have it fit, that's awesome.
Yeah, I'll pull it up.
Yeah, I'd love to
It's
see
super-
it.
It's really beautiful. And after you've done some Rhino work, it's like so, you look at it and you're just like, oh, yeah, that's so
Okay.
Okay, so, are you good at it?
Yeah, I'm good. I just want, I just want mine to be a different type of thing.
Totally.
Yeah.
So I don't want to just say, no, we can't cast your braces.
No, no,
I
I'm
want
not.
to say, maybe there's a way that we can break them down, and kind of figure out how many, and just too, in terms of the volume of metal that we can cast.
No, totally. I didn't really think it was necessarily possible, but I went,
Yeah.
maybe one day, maybe we can foundry or something like that.
Oh, definitely. Who else has files in this, uploaded here that would like some help, maybe working with like scale? Does anybody know how to, wanna know how, okay. You can answer, Sean. Yeah.
I can show the problem.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Tapio, the one kind of. to show you guys how to scale your objects so that they will be more or less exactly the size that you want them to be.
I'll show you that.
Okay, good deal. Your file's enormous.
It's getting there.
Or you can have
This last one, Jack, right, this morning.
Yeah, I didn't.
Booted me off my Teams meeting with my third block.
I didn't have any internet this morning. Okay, downloaded. Should be opening. Oh, failed. Oh, cool.
Oh.
Maybe the internet's gonna crap out again.
I wonder if, oh my gosh. Look at the progress of that.
I know. So slow.
So slow. If it doesn't open this time, why don't we?
Oh, it's 645 megabytes, that's why.
If it doesn't work.
Yeah,
then
failed.
please come back to us a little later.
Yeah, if you want to,
Alright, it is pretty good.
can you throw it on this flash drive? Yeah, sub B stuff.
Well, it's probably some,
Increase the
Oh, yeah.
file size. That was one of the reasons Rhino never used mesh modeling so much, because it's so memory and processor intensive. It makes such big files, but it's less of a concern now. So I'm sorry, what file are we looking at?
If you refresh it in my normal fashion, I just submitted it.
Oh, let me. Okay.
Did you do it in this file or you didn't submit Canvas?
No, I put it in the OneDrive.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah.
Here we're 13 minutes ago.
is it called Storingo?
Yep. Yeah, you just throw it on there. It's kind of my like junk drive, so. Ew. Oh man. Okay, cool. So, tell me about your file.
So I was getting, well, for some reason I really wanted to make an egg. That middle thing is my attempt at a little egg.
This
starting
guy?
from, like, yeah, like a
Oh, that's why you wanted to do. I
Yeah,
like
so
that.
I was trying to figure out like, because I was starting with like drawing a closed like curve and making a surface. Because I
Mhm.
wanted like a very specific like edge and then trying to like group the edges, so like pulling those like curve points up and down.
Uh-huh.
So it's like an egg like drooped over something.
So
But
like, yeah.
I'm still struggling with that. And then I was trying to fillet like the edges, which I guess those edges are like super complex because every time I tried like a different way, it would like create some really chaotic order.
Yeah.
Weird shape.
Yeah, and then some of the other ones, just like in Rhino, how you can like really easily combine really smooth and really sharp shapes, like that.
Yeah, that's fun. What did you use to get these on the surface?
I used a curve, like a curve array, I think.
Okay.
and had those array just along the curve. It worked out.
And then you piped it, or?
So I have the curve, that's the same curve that I did for the egg, and you can see I was doing a lot of different shapes
Oh,
on
yeah.
that curve. So I piped something around that curve and kept the curve, so the curve should still be inside that thing, I think. And then I arrayed, maybe off to the side.
Oh,
And
here it is.
arrayed those things around that curve.
Okay. So you used array curve?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. So like I can just select your, oh, these are all joined. So you had drawn that separately, I assume. So you had drawn that separately, right? Like you just had a separate object,
What do you mean?
array curve, and then you went array curve,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
and then so your curve is like a path. I'm just showing it for the benefit of everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And then you select your number of items, just like we used to. Well, that's interesting. Why is it way over here? Did you have to start with the object on the curve? This isn't one that I'm actually familiar with.
I completely lined them up when I was doing it.
Oh, okay. So you like started with it on actually touching the curve.
Yeah. I don't know if this was from the curve, but basically I started with that tube shape, lined up with the curve,
Oh, okay.
and then had the object where I wanted it on one side of the tube, and then I made it, and then I moved the curve out of the picture and evened them.
Okay. So these were embedded kind of inside the object along the curve. Okay. So I'm just thinking, okay, so if I have my object there, this just isn't one I've done recently or maybe ever really.
Yeah, it was fun.
So now I can set my item number.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is kind of what Kelsey did. So you can see I have my object, and then our curve acts like a rail that's going to ride along this. And when we run array curve, select objects, enter, select path. It gives us, how many items do we want, orientation. We've got no rotation, freeform, or road-like. Right now it's on freeform. So we could kind of play with these options if we want, just to see what it looks like. So we just say no rotation, and then we say, items, we'll say, 15 or something. So that just kind of populates this box along that rail as it is. But as soon as we say, okay, well, let's see what's road-like look like. Okay. So it's kind of tilting the box around, and then freeform kind of does something else too. So it's always really important to just explore those options up there in your command line. And of course you can kind of play around with the number of things, etc., etc. And then I'm guessing you took it and you were like, okay, I'm going to pipe it. And then you can pick, other points along. But that's essentially how Kelsey made that object. But cool, that's a nice job. So where do you want to go from here as far as, you're using these as casting? Is the egg really more the direction you're looking to go?
No, I think I just had a curve.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say we could spend some time like trying to figure that out as far as like sub D modeling goes. But
Yeah, I would like to. I think, and here I was mainly just playing around. If I'm gonna cast this project, I think it'd be fun to cast some of these things, but I'm interested in like creating some sort of like chain link that would be better to cast. So like a very detailed like chain link.
oh, okay.
I would mess around with, yeah. But like some of like these sort of things, like, I think that would be a cool shape. Make like chain links out of that, and then I would cut it in half and try to
Then you
move those sides so it's ready to kind of make a chain. If that makes sense.
gotcha. Would you cast it as a whole and then cut it by hand, or would you cast it with
No,
a
I
cut?
think I would try to cut it in here.
Okay.
So I wouldn't have to deal with that, you know.
Gotcha. So the scale of these things is probably large. Is that correct?
It's kind of in the middle.
Let's see.
I wasn't really working with the scale.
We're in inches right now. So let's see how big these are. So that's 10 inches.
So that's a giant shape.
Okay, so this is like a perfect example of like scale, right? So did you think you were working in millimeters?
No, I.
Okay, you didn't.
Just wasn't paying attention.
You weren't. Okay. Well, all right then. That's fine.
Besides when I was like wrapping things, and I tried to measure, but.
Okay. Well, so far, so this is 10 inches. This probably, I'm guessing, wouldn't fit in a flask as it is. So what we can do, do you generally work in millimeters or inches, Kelsey?
Well, with jewelry, typically
Millimeters? Okay. So if you find yourself in inches, so we can see down at the bottom of our screen here where my cursor is, that tells us the units we're in. So what we can do is go to File, Properties. This may take a sec to load here. And then we can see we've got all these kind of like very minute things we can change about our like interface and Rhino itself. So under the document properties, we have units and a little drop down arrow, and I can change the model and layout units. The one we're most concerned with is the model. So we want to use that drop down box here and go to millimeters and say OK. So we didn't really know, or Kelsey wasn't really measuring anything. So do we want to scale our model by 25.4? So that's just the conversion factor from inches to millimeters. So since she said no, I wasn't really modeling in any particular dimension or units kept in mind, we can just say no. And it'll warn us, okay, model units have changed, removing CAM plugin data, so you don't have to worry about that. Say okay. So nothing has changed except, okay, now we're in millimeters. So now this thing is 10 millimeters. So how big would this need to be for you to cast it? Like, what's your goal, you think?
Like, for, I guess, it's probably
Like maybe like 5 millimeters or
Yeah.
something, or less? I mean, that's 5 millimeters is like 1/4 of an inch maybe, or 6 millimeters is 1/4 of an inch.
That's pretty small.
Okay.
So what's the,
I don't know what you're thinking.
Yeah, what's your, 5 centimeters?
Centimeters is
So that's,
really big, yeah.
so that'd be 50 millimeters, is that right? Yeah, 50 millimeters. So let's say it's, the whole thing is, we'll just say we want it to be 15 millimeters or something. We'll just pick a measurement. So to scale something like this that's like so organic is kind of hard to do. One thing we can do to kind of like figure out like the dimensional space this takes up is we can highlight it and go to Analyze and Bounding Box. So it's asking us to choose bounding box option. I always just kind of stick with the the set settings. So I can hit enter, and you can see it gives me a box that essentially encapsulates that object. So I can turn on my ghosted mode, so I can see that in there. Whoa, it's right. Yeah, right? So rad. Technology working for you. So we've essentially got this thing in a volumetric space, but it's going to make scaling it that much easier. So we can kind of see like the dimensions in each direction. So right now it's 0.43 millimeters is what it says, which is pretty small, right? So if I want to scale that, I can go down here to scale 3D, or in the command line I can type scale. And you've got scale 1D, 2D, just normal scale allows us to select these objects. So I'm going to select my chain link and my box and hit enter when done. And it's going to ask me to pick a base point. So this is going to be the point from which things scale. And then my second point is at the limits of the other end of the object. So basically just the other end of this box, because I'm using that as like my length. And now I can scale it dynamically just with the mouse, or I can type in, okay, I want this to be 15 millimeters. So now when I dimension it, let me guess, my dimension is still in inches. That's annoying. Didn't used to do that. Let's see, let's go to File, Properties, Layout. Maybe this will change it. Layout in millimeters. So now, let's see. Nope. My dimension style is still, so that's very strange. It used to flip over.
Do you think it's glitching? Or like, would it have to be closed and reopened maybe?
I don't know, but I can go to annotation style under dimension, and we're in inch decimal. It's curious. But, I know.
Huh.
Curious. Yeah. It used to roll right over. That's not cool. I wonder though, let's see, let me just try something really quick. Sorry. File, properties. And then let's go back. Okay, now I'm going to scale everything. Yeah, sure. Let's scale it.
Oh.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, everything's huge. Okay, so crazy. There it is. 15 millimeters. Well, it's, yeah, so, okay. So I think the lesson that we've all learned here, or at least me specifically, is if you don't ask it to scale it, it's not going to change your dimensions, which is a bummer. I don't know if that's a new thing or not, but I don't think it used to do that. So we know it's 15 millimeters for scaled, so I can remove this box, and this is scaled to the appropriate size. We've lost our construction plane, but overall that doesn't really impact anything, the file, everything is going to operate the same regardless. So, yeah. So that's scaling in a way.
This is kind of an arbitrary question. What is the point of having that little instruction plan?
What
You
is
have
the
the
point?
whole void of the word.
Ah, yes. Well, right. So the void is great and all. But the construction plane is actually super useful. So what I can do with it. So right now in this space, if I try to draw a line,
It's not gonna be on any like axis or anything.
it only draws on the construction plane.
Yeah.
Always. So if I wanted to draw on one of these faces, I can't really do it unless I either rotate the box and then rotate my screen, or I can go to my C-planes menu, and I have all these different tools to orient the construction plane. So I can say, okay, I want to set C-plane to object. So if I click on this, and I click on the part of the object I want to set the C-plane to, I'm going to have to change it back to shaded because in Ghosted it doesn't really, it's hard to tell it what plane you're actually selecting. But so if I click on that, now my C-plane just moves inside this object most likely. Curious, I can't see it. But I should be able to now draw on that plane. Yeah, so now it's drawing.
That kind of answers the question.
I thought it might. Truthfully, I can't tell you where the C-plane went. Usually it shows a representation of it, but we lost it. And you can set that by quite a few different ways. My favorite is by object or by 3 points. So if you set it by 3 points, you can snap it. Snap it, snap it. Oh, there it is. There's our C-plane. So now I can draw, on this face. And the cool thing about that is I can take this now, draw a curvature. So I've essentially made this, space here. I can use it to extrude objects. I can use it to cut things. Like if I wanted to split this object, I can select that and then select this as my cutting object. And now I've essentially cut that out, and I can extrude using this curve if I want, or I can take another object or something, like we'll just duplicate another box here. Because you can like join objects this way. Actually, I think this might only work in a sub-D surface. If I do it with a more simpler curve, I can get it to work. But essentially, that's a way to draw on the surface and extract things or extrude things, stuff like that. So let's take a look at your file.
Before we do that, because you're
Yeah.
just kind of more advanced thing, I think, right? You're
Maybe.
This is my first time ever using this, so.
Well, yeah, but I think what you're doing is generating like a lot of movement. Can I interject with something simple?
Yeah,
first?
I can stop. Sorry.
Yeah, who has, I just want to make sure everything is covered. I want to actually just go in using Avery?
Sure.
Yeah, can we go yours?
Yes.
Okay.
They're not to scale.
That's good, because
That's
I'm gonna
perfect.
show y'all how to scale them to size, and I just wanna start with like a simpler one.
I think they print in mine.
Oh. Well, we'll look at Avery's and then we'll do it again.
Okay.
Which one is it?
Avery.
Final?
Final?
So I put, it's hard to see, but down, on the whiteboard, I just jotted down common ring sizes. And that's gonna be the inside diameter in millimeters. So I started with a size 5, 5.5, 6, 6.5, and took it up to 8.5. If you know your ring size that you're working for, or that we're working towards, you know, and I mean, I just know this because in the intro class, I just measured my index finger and I'm a 6. So, like I said, this is kind of a decent mid-range of sizes. What I would like, these are good, by the way.
Yeah, nice job.
What I would like for Scott to show everybody, just using one of the simpler rings, is how to scale, like let's say that we want to make sure that this is a size 6. I'm just going to pick that number out, ring size. When we look at our ring sizes, a size 6, the inside diameter is, actually let's say it's going to be let's make it 5.5, because that's actually just a simple number. If we wanted to scale one of these rings to a 5.5, the inside diameter is 16 millimeters. So I think it would be useful if Scott would show everybody how to actually scale either up or down based on that inside diameter, so that you end up with a ring that actually fits in the ring. Does that make
Okay.
sense?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm with it. Actually paying attention. Yeah, so there's a couple ways we could do this. You can scale by eye. You can scale using exact numbers. So the first thing I'm going to do is try to dimension what we've got here. Let's see. Get a good idea. Come on. It's got nothing. Might have been my fault. Here. Oh, there's a quad. There's a quad. So close, 18 millimeters.
So right now, your ring is basically a size 8 or 7.75. So just about some person size for sure. That could easily be one of your rings. But let's say they made a custom design and somebody's like, oh, I love this, but I need it to be a size 5.5. So then we need to scale it down 4 inches, right? So or whatever.
So you want to shoot I like to just have a line across here. So that's like my reference line. I'm just going to get rid of this measurement for now.
So you just drew an actual line, like
Yeah.
on the inside of the ring, just as a point of,
Yeah, so I'm using my O snaps to snap to the quadrant on the inside of your ring and another quadrant. And I mean, you've made it pretty easy as these are all very round and kind of accessible. We'll take a look at another way to do it in a second, but essentially we would go to our scale command, which is here. So we'd select our ring, hit enter, select one end here, select the other end here. So now I've got it, right? So now I can scale. And we're going to 16 millimeters.
Yeah.
So I just typed in 16. So we'll run through that one more time. So scale is this cube down here, or we can type it in. Objects to scale, it's going to be our ring. Enter when done. Base point is going to be one of the quadrants. Other base point, scale factor or second reference point is going to be the other quadrant. Now I've got it, so I can just type in 16 and then we're scaled down.
So notice what happens though, is it scales the entire ring down, width, depth, all the detail. So it isn't taking your ring design and simply making it fit a smaller finger. It's actually shrinking the entire design down and scaling the whole thing. Does that make sense? And are you choosing the scale 3D for that?
I am, yeah. Let's see what 2D does here.
So is there a way to scale the entire design without impacting the entire form? Does that kind of make sense? Like, is there a way to shrink it without scaling it down?
Yeah, I just did that. I think. Maybe not. Let's see.
You can just scale the dimensions independently. Well, that's what I said.
Yeah, I'm not sure there is a way other than like adding more material to the inside of it, right? Like if you wanted to make that interior dimensions smaller. Yeah. So like, I guess when you're saying like sizing rings like that, you're considering like cutting out a piece and like just reattaching it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Great question.
Did you say that was called the scale of the
Yeah, so scale 3D, 2D, and 1D. So let's see.
I can't find the 3D one, like when the command is just scale 1D.
Oh, yeah, if you just do scale, there's also the box down here. That's scale 3D there and 2D.
Oh, I have it.
So if I click and hold on this, to bring this out. Non-uniform scale by plane, scale 1D. So if I scale 1D, it's just gonna squish it like that. 2D. So 2D just scales the inside diameter. It's not scaling the walls of the piece. Is that more a little bit of what you're
I
thinking?
was listening, but I didn't see it.
So I'm scaling, so 2D just allows me to scale the inside diameter. So I'm scaling it like on the X and Y. Is that what you're more thinking of?
You're also compressing the ridge with the fat curves and you get less.
Oh, I see what you're saying, yeah, so it's not
Yeah.
quite the same. Yeah.
Well, it's similar to if you were to cut it out, because you would be continuously. But like as far as like, yeah, I guess there's no analog between this and doing that.
So,
like
yeah,
in
this is
real
an
life.
interesting thing to think about. And I would say compared to what we just did with Kelsey's file, and then, like if your rings were designed like really far out of scale, and then you had to shrink them way down, like what would that do to the detail behind it if it's something that's really not tenable? I would say that across the board, the best thing to do when you're designing is to try to start your design in the right dimension, like making sure that you're opening your file up in millimeters,
Yeah. Here, let me show you that again. So
Do you know how to extend a line in here in order for the,
not necessarily. It just helps me visualize where my points are. So like the way I approach 3D modeling is kind of from a 2D hand drawing aesthetic. Like I learned how to draft by hand on a drafting table. So we used a lot of things called construction lines, and these are essentially objects that have no meaning other than to make it easier for you to kind of navigate what you're trying to do. So this just allows me to have a visual reference of that center point.
does that fit? Well, you can have it.
But I can delete this and scale it without it. So the question is there a way to scale it to exact dimension? Yes. So when I go through the command, watch the command line up here. So whether it's 2D or 3D, whatever you're kind of choosing to scale it as, I can select this object, hit enter. I want to make sure my quad is selected because I know I have one to snap to. So quad to quad. And then I can say like, okay, I want to size it to 6.5. So I type in 16.9 millimeters. And then I hit enter. Yeah, so now my interior dimension better be 16.9. Cool. Any other questions about scaling like that? It's a really good one. Yeah.
Say you're using like the typing features you're creating design.
Like these guys?
Yeah, like, how do you know like what the practicality of actually running it would be based on like how thick it is?
Yeah. So I think that would great question, right? So like how chunky, like how it's going to separate your fingers, right? Yeah. Well, one way to check that is actually 3D printing it out, right? Before you go to casting. So this allows you to prototype it in, and we don't even have to do it in the casting material, but that's what we have in there. So we'll print it with that. It's old. We don't really care about using it, but generally you'd have like a draft material that you could print with that's much cheaper than the material you're even using for a casting object. So you probably print it with that first and do like a test fit and say like, okay, how does this feel like on my hand? And then you can go back and make changes based on that kind of feedback. But I'd also like take a look at your dimension tool and say, okay, how is this going to fit on my finger? And get a rough idea of like, the thick bits, right? To see like, how far that's going to separate my fingers. And even just find a piece of material and stick it in there to see how that feels, I think would be a close enough analog. But yeah, I think just 3D printing them out and checking would be the way I would do it. I don't know, Haley, what do you think?
I mean, I think that's definitely the most straightforward, like one-to-one. You
Yeah.
really wanna see what it's gonna look like, 'cause, it's, in this way, it's kind of similar to when we work with wax, we used to see this material, it's like colorful, and it's very tactile, it feels different, it looks different, it weighs a lot less, and then when we convert that into metal, it's always a pretty dramatic shift, you're always like, whoa, like this is so much heavier than I thought it would be, or so much lighter, or something like that. And I think the same happens here. You look at it on the screen and it seems a certain way, and you can get really detailed. But then once it's like printed and manifested in material, wanna print a copy and just make sure this is really, they can print it, they can even like place the actual gemstones in the print, just to see. So it's one thing to look at something on a screen, and it's another one to put it on your hand and be like, whoa, this thing's a lot taller than I was expecting. You know what I mean, like those kinds of things, so.
Yeah. Totally. And I did that with my wife's engagement ring. Like, I think it was the year we bought this printer. That was the project I gave myself. Was designing, printing, and sizing it all around a gemstone that I had bought from Etsy. And yeah, totally. Like, I just printed a copy out and just dropped it right in the fitting. And of course I didn't do any of like the casting or setting or anything like that. I farmed that out to other people, but yeah, it's totally cool. It's like spot on. Cool. Okay.
Alright, well, let's open Sean's file.
Sean.
Assume that it's finally like downloaded and like it's good.
It's on my flash drive, so we'll see if I can. If I can even open it up. There it is.
So while this is opening, I also just want to kind of touch base with everybody, because everybody, some of you are definitely working at a different level. Like Anna, you've got your ears all printed and ready to go. It would be, did y'all see the Princess Anna got? They're pretty awesome. They look pretty amazing. So Hannah's more or less ready to start casting. Some of you, I mean, what I'd like to do is be able to kind of touch base with everybody, and just sort of talk about how this will either, like, are you going to use Rhino in a way to kind of combine with your wax designs, or are you kind of interested in maybe just keeping the Rhino stuff a little bit separate, and working, kind of, like, just kind of how these things are starting to shift or change or impact your ideas about how this project is moving forward. I know it feels a little bit sort of like baptism by fire, I'm just throwing you in there, but I feel like it's really hard to design for these processes until you actually get in there and use them. So I just kind of want to feel that out. And what I would also like to do is you're not locked into just making rings. We're starting that with people who haven't ever done Rhino before. But if you have an idea for something that goes beyond just a ring, and I know that, like Kelsey and Emily and Hannah have already done this. But if you're wanting maybe to make something using Rhino, but you can't figure out how to do it, this would also be, like today, Thursday, these would be really great times to get that help as well. So be thinking about that in terms of like how this is going to impact your project. And like I said, you're not locked into just working with rings. I just think that that's a really great way to start to work with tools and start to figure stuff out. Okay. Let's see what Sean has done. Whoa.
I don't know why this like workspace is reminding me of like Battleship, the game.
Oh yeah.
The grid. Maybe. Oof, that'd be sharp.
Look at that. It's just like a plane, like, picture that, but it's sort of
Cubes that are rotated 45 degrees, and then press it and then cut a hole through it.
that's not printable.
Well, it would be just those weird little, I can figure out how to deal with that.
It might be able to fix that, but
And then you have to pass all of
They're not holes, it's just, I can unfillet that and then,
those. Oh. Really?
yeah.
Oh, that's,
no, it's open.
yeah, that's not
The corner of it's filled it. So how I unfillet it, it's solid.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like if you click on an object and it says open poly surface, usually we'll have trouble whether you know, it can vary what happens to the object when it goes to the slicer, but it could be missing surfaces or just not even print.
How to correct that.
Yeah.
Trying to throw something in the arrow, but
Yeah, fillets will do that when they can't resolve the surface between those 2 points. Essentially, it's because it's shaped like that, like it can't, for whatever reason, it can't put that surface in there. There's another command. I think it's blend edge that I've found to be a little more reliable than fillet in like weird situations like this. Like you can set your radiuses. And then you can add handles. And then you can dynamically adjust them.
So, for laying edges, is it pretty straightforward when you have like this straight line?
Yeah, it's super straightforward on some kind of object like this, but like on this,
Yeah.
that's when Rhino has issue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because that's the issue I was having, like it seemed like that egg shape, like it seemed like the curve, the edge was straightforward, because it was just one curve, and then
Yep.
I would like select the whole thing with the same fillet across it, and it would like create all these weird.
Freak out.
Yeah. it,
Yeah.
Like, seemed like
All the surfaces are going everywhere, and you're like, that's
yeah,
not right.
exactly.
Yeah.
So is that just like is there a way to kind of?
Well, I think there would be, so there is now, well, so blend edge
Oh.
might be able to compensate for some of that. Like you'd have to really figure out what the limits are of that object. I think if I were making something like that, I'd probably, now that I have the option in Rhino, I'd probably make it through a sub D surface.
Okay.
Yeah. But blend edge allows you to add handles, move stuff along, and then once you're done, you know, it gives you, it can kind of resolve that surface in a way that fillet may not be able to. But even then, Rhino can have issues with fillets are kind of a continual problem if it's not like a really standardized connection of parts.
Yeah.
So. The problem.
So the problem was when I was building the wings on the spaceship.
So this guy here,
Yeah, so I was using.
or this guy here.
Yeah, so in order to, like, if you go back to the different planes that it shows, where it shows like all the different planes at once. If you go back to the view that shows all the different planes.
Oh, all the different views. This view.
Yeah, so if you are editing something in one plane,
Uh huh.
the depth, like, so you're able to edit 2 dimensions at once. If you edit it in one of the planes.
Oh, and here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in that case, the z dimension is going to, if you're in a top one, the z dimension is going to automatically snap to the plane. Anytime you're trying to move something or define something in that plane. And so I was wondering, like, so when I was building the wings on that spaceship, in order to give them that slight, in order to make them go slightly up in the Z dimension, I had to actually move the entire ship slightly below, so that when I did that extrude command, it would move it up just slightly.
So what was your starting object for this?
It was a sub-lead oversoil.
Okay, because now it's a solid poly surface. So did you?
I moved into it.
Oh. So is this where you started though, at the
That
sub
one
B?
was a different one that I made, and that one was actually reflected.
Right. Yeah.
The
Yeah.
other one, I basically cloned it and then reversed it.
So you started out as one of these guys.
Yeah, and then I used the extrude sub B command and just grab like more of those little boxes. And then like when you drag it out, it's kind of arbitrary where, well, it's not arbitrary, it's only in the other dimension. So the unknown plane, if you're in one of those two-dimensional planes,
So you were working in the two-dimensional plane. Did you find that easier for some reason, or?
it's cleaner a little bit because there's a lot lost.
Yeah, I think it kind of just comes down to preference. Like when I rarely use those except for like very specific things.
I mean, it kind of makes sense.
Oh, sure. Like it, right? Like I said, I think that comes more down to preference than anything.
Like, if you know the situation you get into where you don't know whether something's like behind it or underneath it or like coming towards you, it's all to do with those problems.
Yeah, I don't know. I've gotten so used to this that
So if you try and drag that out, use the extrude command, and try and drag out through this square.
I mean, I can grab them
Oh, that was actually a lot.
and just pull them.
Which command is that?
It's just the gumball.
Oh, you can use the gumball effort.
Yeah. So, right, the extrude command. This dude, which acts a little different.
Yeah, so I was using that, and it's very difficult to.
Well, if I hold shift, right, it keeps it locked.
That actually results in the problem.
And then, I can then grab those guys and, or maybe just these guys. What?
Just like the movement of, I wonder if you can make like animations.
I know.
Yeah, I know, it's so weird.
Really cute. I don't know what about this, like completely behind.
It's kind of fun to me.
It's.
Super weird, right? I'm sorry. We're at 4 o'clock.
Yeah, so, hey, so let me jump in. What I would like to do, because I needed to just get my head together and just double check my measurements, and I'm glad that I did. We're gonna run back into the studio in a little bit and finish up, or just kind of like finish the, investment demo real quick. And like I said, at this point, it's actually not gonna take super long. I just needed to kind of like make sure that I was And it turns out, yeah, it's wrong. So, now that we know the right measurements, I do wanna finish that up today before everybody goes. What other questions, do y'all have any other specific questions for Scott? Does anybody have something specific to their file or something they're trying to do that Scott can help you with? That you need help with?
So Scott, if you could actually show me, the sizing, because I'm doing it, but it's not connecting somehow.
Okay. Yeah, would you like me to work with you individually right now?
No, I can wait till.
Okay. Anybody else have like a general question? No? Cool. Well, I mean, I think you all did some awesome work. I mean,
Yeah.
great exploration, like really, really cool. And you know, some fairly advanced techniques. And I learned something from Kelsey about the array along curve. Like, I don't know if I've ever used that command, honestly. So, yeah, there's always stuff to discover. Well, cool. All right, well, I'm going to stop the recording there.